Anyone happened to miss the live chat podcast that we just did? We are doing a live workshop right now.
Live chat podcast.
Live chat podcast.
I'm going to term that coin that term.
On the so-named live chat podcast, we talked all about squatting and deadlifting and sort of the difference between those two moves. And we thought that we would just, hop outside because we live in beautiful sunny California and show you what that looks like.
Yep. Let's see if this lighting is okay. So when you're standing over here, because it looks like it's a little bit cut off. Yeah, let's go in the shade more rather. You want to try scooting the mat forward? There we go.
Better?
I think so. Ooh, King Mike is on here. Do you know who King Mike is? Hello, King Mike.
I don't know, but I'm assuming there's Mike somewhere in there.
Woo! Pete is back. All right, Pete's back for more. This is gonna be a lot more visual. We just did a podcast previous to this live workshop, so now we're kind of going over the things we just talked about, but giving you a visual as well, so you can understand squats and deadlifts even more.
All right, so we're gonna start with we're doing everything bodyweight today. We're gonna start demoing just a squat.
So just a little preview to what we're about to do. We're gonna go over 6 different moves. So move number 1, we're gonna talk about the perfect squat. From there, we're gonna talk about a single leg squat because that's a great way to make it more challenging from home, mastering your single leg squat. And then after those 2 squat variations, we're gonna talk about deadlifts. First, the regular deadlift, and then we're gonna talk about a single leg deadlift. And then the last 2 moves on the agenda is a good morning deadlift. And then last move, a good morning squat combo. So those are the 6 moves we're going to be demonstrating here, talking about the things that you should pay attention to. And we're doing it all body weight, so that way you can do it body weight as well.
All right.
So Steven's going to start with showing us what a squat looks like. You want to talk about where you're putting your feet?
Yep, so feet are always going to be, this one's a little bit up to you. So wherever's comfortable on the feet, I like to say shoulder width is a good place to start for a basic squat. And then the first thing we're going to do, squatting or deadlift, is always a hinge at the hips. So before I even start to bend my knees, I tilt my hips a little bit forward. I'm bracing my core, my back's nice and flat. And as the hips go back, I start to bend the knees. Think about hips and knees bending at the same rate here. You find somewhere comfortable. So we never want to lose that flat back. We never want to lose tension in the core. Wherever that point is for you is where we're going to stop. And then we're going to press through the floor, reversing the motion. So hips are drawing forward, knees are pulling, I like to say almost completely straight, but not quite. We always keep a little bend in the knees.
And then Steven's going really slow right now. And really that's the best way to learn a motion, is to slow it down. And then once you get good at doing the motion slow, that's where we get to pick it up. So I think Pete asked the question earlier, how do you keep your core tight when you're going fast, right? Like, so when you're doing when you're doing squats super fast in a HIIT class, that basically just comes down to how well you practice your squats outside of your HIIT class. So maybe you lose some of your core engagement when you're going fast, when you're tired, but the more you can master it going slow, the better you're gonna get at it doing fast. So when you're doing your HIIT class, yes, maybe we sacrifice some form, but we do both. We do the strength training and we do the HIIT training, so that way you can get better at both individually.
Yeah, it's a mind-muscle connection at a certain level. So we start by going slow, which allows you to connect to all the working parts. And the more you can practice it slow, the more thought that's behind your movement, the better you're going to be able to hold that form even when you're going fast.
Let's talk about some things that go wrong in a squat. Quite commonly, I'll see a squat and they'll stop like right here, right? So if you're not going down very low, you're really not getting the most you can out of a squat. So while we're practicing body weight, try and see how low you can get without letting your knees drive forward. So the goal is to get parallel to the floor is an awesome goal. If you could get there, that's really great. If you can get deeper than that, that's also totally safe. So I know there's some people that say like, you never want to go past parallel in a squat, but that really depends on your level of fitness. Like if you're a high level fitness person, like most of you who follow us are, you can go ahead and deepen your squat. That's one way to make it harder.
Right. And you're sort of determining that point by where you feel like you lose control or where you feel like you lose tension. Mm-hmm. So if you can get all the way down there and you feel like your core's still on, you feel like your glutes and your hamstrings are still engaged, and you're in control, there's no reason why you can't go all the way down to the bottom.
All right, so then one great thing you can do to make a squat harder without any extra weight, single leg squat. So you can do a single leg squat by simply kickstanding your foot. So you're putting one toe on the ground and all of your weight is on one leg. So you're focusing on whatever heel is on the floor. Or if you're more advanced, you can lift the foot completely off the ground and take it into like a hovering position. So practicing that single leg squat with one foot hovered. Or you can do a pistol squat variation. So one leg out in front of you. This is going to be the hardest one of all. And then you're going to come down, maybe have a bench behind you to practice. Some of you can do it just body weight.
And then in both these moves, pay attention to where her knee is. It's never moving past really about midfoot. So if you're wearing shoes, sort of right over your shoelaces. If it creeps towards your toe, then we start to put a lot of tension on your knee joints, which is, you know, bad for the joint itself, but you're also losing the tension in the working muscles, and you know, you're not working in that move as effectively as you could be.
All right, so let's move on to deadlift. How to deadlift.
Yep, so this one really amounts to a bigger focus on the hinge than on the knee bend. So usually I say start with a slight bend in the knees. You're gonna keep that same bend the whole time. Now it's all up to the hinge. We're gonna send the hips back. We're gonna reach for the toes. Notice there's no change in the bend in my back. I've got tension in my abs the whole time. And then to come up, I'm not gonna straighten the legs at all. I'm just gonna start to draw my hips more underneath my shoulders, back stays flat, and maybe I finish by taking my knees a little straighter at the top, but for the most part, you're picking a bend in the knees and you're gonna hold that the whole time.
So let's talk about things that go wrong in a deadlift. Commonly the things that go wrong is a rounded back. So what I see a lot is like a rounding. Steven can almost not even do it wrong. Like really round your back. There you go. So this is a really awful deadlift because his spine is in a poor position. That's going to lead to injury. So straighten out your back one more time. So that is a neutral spine. All right. That's what you want to have when you're doing any type, really any motion, but especially in your deadlift.
Right.
All right.
And you can sort of coach yourself here by, you know, asking, are my shoulders rolled forward? If so, press them back, open up the chest. Just like so.
Yeah. Hey, Louie. Hey, Libari. I don't know how to say that name. I'm sorry. I won't even try. But thank you for joining us, Louie, and this other name. If you can comment, if your name isn't obvious in your Instagram name, go ahead, write your name down below so we know who's who.
Yep, and then just like the squat, another way that we can sort of level this one up is by doing it single leg. For the deadlift, there's really two main ways to do this. Like the squat, you can kickstand your toe. So you're going to make your opposite foot as light as possible, keeping that bend in the leg that's on the floor in the heavy leg. Everything else stays the same here. Or if you really want to work on your balance, take that opposite leg and start to kick it back. It hovers off the floor. I'm still reaching for the toe, still keeping that flat back, and then I'm slowly reversing to the top. A lot of time what I see is people that go too fast here. Think about there being a sort of a connection between your shoulders and your heel. So as you extend the leg back, you're dropping your chest towards the toe at the same rate you reach back with that leg.
And just to be clear, this deadlift is extremely, extremely high level, complicated move. Like a single leg deadlift is something that I took a long time to master. And this is something right now at home with bodyweight, you guys can really practice, because the second you add weights, it just gets that much harder to understand how to do a deadlift. Hey, Joanne, welcome. So we're talking about single leg deadlifts. So a lot of times what I see go wrong in a single leg deadlift is the hips. They splay open and you're doing this. You're stretching out your body. You're not working your muscle here, right? So just the same way that we keep our hips square when both feet are on the floor, as soon as you lift one leg up, you keep the hips facing down. All right, and what does that is core engagement and then the hip hinge. So keeping your back flat, keeping your hips down, and balancing. And then most people, they're not gonna be able to lift their foot up, which is why Steven showed the first variation with your toe actually still down on the ground. That is a beautiful single leg deadlift. For most of you, that is enough. Once you feel it in the hamstring and glute from here, you can lift up the back foot, all right? So let's talk about the next one, which was a good morning deadlift. Okay, this is also another fun, more high-level deadlift variation.
Yep, so with this one, you usually either have the weight across the shoulders, or maybe if you're using a dumbbell, you're holding it at the top of the chest. And really all of your deadlift components stay the same here. You're dropping the chest forward as you send the hips back. Notice the shoulders are never rounding, even if that weight's held in front, back stays flat. And for the most part, it's all the same, you guys. We're just gonna reverse, holding that lifted chest, drawing the hips forward, finding a squeeze in the glutes and hamstrings at the top.
So that is like, it's funny because when we don't have the weights on us, the deadlift, good morning, or regular deadlift looks exactly the same, right? So basically the difference between a good morning deadlift and a regular deadlift is where the weight is.
So regular deadlift, obviously we're gonna be down here. Good morning, it's either right in front of the chest or behind the head. With a dumbbell, I like to hold it here. That just means that your weight placement's a little bit different, so there's a bit of an extra emphasis here on the upper back and keeping the shoulders rolled back. So I like this one actually because it sort of trains me to focus on everything above my waist, and for me that translates to the core, really making sure that my abs are pulled in.
And why this movement is so important for us to discuss with you right now is because you can do a good morning deadlift with a very light weight and make it very challenging. So normally when we do deadlifts, we're focusing on a heavy bar that's loaded down towards the floor. When you take the weight up to your chest, that makes the move 10 times harder. And you can use something like a 10-pound dumbbell, like what Steven's doing, and your deadlift becomes a lot more complicated because you're taking the weight that was down here, bringing it up here. That adds a lot more force. And so let's talk about the last move.
Yeah, so the last move is really just going to be combining that good morning deadlift with a squat. And the reason I like this one is it illustrates just the difference between the two. It forces you to break them down between the hip hinge and the knee bend.
So he means the difference between a squat and a deadlift. This move is great for showing you the difference between the squat and the deadlift.
So the first part is obviously your deadlift. We hinge forward, keeping a fixed bend in the knees. We freeze, and then all we're going to do is bend the knees and drop the hips. That's your squat right there. We come all the way back to the top. Hinge from the waist, bend the knees, drop the hips, drive to a standing position.
So this is great because for those of us that are unclear as to what the difference between a squat and a deadlift is, it becomes very clear in this motion. Steven starts off with a deadlift, his knees are straight, his hips go back. This is your deadlift. From here, he cuts that deadlift in half, he changes it into a squat by simply bending the knees, and then from here, he finishes with a squat standing up straight. So let's do that one more time. It's a deadlift, you stop at the halfway point, you turn it into a squat, you bend the knees, and then you stand up straight. Can we do the opposite? Can you go squat to good morning? Yes. Let's try that. So let's go squat, he bends the knees. Now he's gonna straighten out his legs, his chest is low, and then he stands back up. Let's do that one more time. So a squat into a good morning style deadlift. Watch how his knees go forward, and then the knees straighten, and then he stands up using the glutes and hamstrings. So this is something like while you're at home, you can practice body weight or with a 10-pound dumbbell, and it's gonna be extremely challenging. It's gonna teach you how to move from your hips. It's gonna teach you the difference between a squat and a deadlift, and it's gonna take a lot of movements out of our quads and teach us how to use our hamstrings and our glutes, because that's where most of us have trouble working.
Yeah, and this is going to be the foundation for like literally any lower body movement that you do in a gym or in regular life. So this is a real important foundation to have.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be walking around like picking up your kids or picking up your dog with a spine that looks like this, right? You're going to tweak your back, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, and then you're going to have to come up with a really good cover story because no one wants to say that they threw their back out picking up laundry detergent.
Yeah, so like the things that we're talking about, like think about how you can carry these tips throughout your day-to-day life. So when you're walking and or when you're sprinting or running, you actually have a little bit of a hip hinge, right? Like you start off like this and then you come up. That is like essentially a lunge, right? When you bend down to pick something up, you're squatting with good form. Or if you're coming down, you find a penny a quarter on the floor, that's a deadlift, you scoop it back up, right? Or even more likely, you bend over with a deadlift and then you come up with a squat. That's your good morning to squat combo. So like try and make these moves relevant to whatever other postures, whatever activities you do in your day-to-day life.
Yes, because most of us are just training for real life.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for this first workshop. Hopefully that was helpful to some of you out there. Thanks for jumping on. As always, feel free to let the questions fly. We're going to be jumping on same time roughly, as in around 4:30 next Saturday. And I think we haven't released the topic yet, but we're going to do that either tomorrow or Monday.
Oh, do you want, is it a secret? We have a topic.
It's top secret. I can't let anyone know.
Well, basically, it's going to be 2 new moves. So this
It's going to be 2 new moves. We're going to be working on sort of the foundations of movement as a whole. So I think next week we're going to be focusing a bit more on the core itself and the neutral spine that we talked a bit more about today. So think planks and think push-ups. All right, you guys. Thanks for jumping on. Happy Saturday. Hopefully we see you tomorrow for the live partner workout.
Yep, partner workout.
Partner/pet workout
at 10 a.m., right?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Yes.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Check in with you guys soon.
Bye.